Our Toyota's really built different. We've got a 2003 Camry here with 342,500 miles on the clock. We're going to do a front to back inspection on this car and see how it's held up over the last 20 years. So guys, again, this is a 2003 Toyota Camry with 342,447 miles on the clock, if I remember the exact number. This is a customer's vehicle. If you'll remember back to the blue 2013 Outback, we've worked on a couple times and done a couple videos on. It's the one we had to pull the dashboard for the mode door actuator. This is his second car. He brought the car to me to do an inspection on and do some repair work too. And of course, Toyota's a little bit foreign to me because I'm a Subaru guy and I mainly work on Subarus, although I can work on basically anything. So it's not like something I can't do. It's just have all the specialty tools and service manuals already for Subarus, and just Subarus are second nature at this point. So he brought it to me primarily for a replacement of the front struts, a replacement of the serpentine belt, which I've already completed, and check the brakes out front and rear. And the main issue was to replace the lower oil pan, as there were several issues. First was that the quick lube guys had stripped out the drain plug over years and years of oil changes, and at 342,000 miles, it's had its share of oil changes. So the drain plug is leaking. It has gotten very loosey-goosey, stripped out from over-tightening over the years, so I've been told. I haven't pulled it out and visually inspected it yet. I just looked under there the other day and saw the drip from the drain plug. Also, he told me that some point in the past, the dipstick broke, and part of the dipstick is actually down inside the oil pan or somewhere in the lower part of the dipstick tube. He put another dipstick in there, but it doesn't read correctly because we think it's hitting the other part of the broken dipstick in there. So we're going to try to fish that out while we're in there. And the third reason for replacing that lower oil pan is it's already leaking, so it needs to be resealed anyway. So between the drain plug issue, the dipstick down in there, and the leakage, we're going to be putting an oil pan on it as well. But Toyota does not have that oil pan stocked, and it will not be in until tomorrow morning. So that is a job for tomorrow. We do have the struts. That will be a job today. Not sure if I'm going to film a video on it or not. So what we're going to do now is a full inspection. He wanted a full inspection done just because, you know, to see what else it needs with the amount of mileage on it. Who knows how it's held up and what it needs. He did assure me there's a brand new air filter in here. He had the clips break and had to screw it shut, so I don't want to open that and really mess with that too much. I just got a ton of buildup and stuff. I mean, 342,000 miles, that is a lot of driving. I would assume that the throttle body needs to be cleaned. Just an assumption there, guys. I do have a new PCV valve and PCV hose for this car, but the hose has not arrived yet. It is dry rotted and cracking, and I know I don't want to touch that until I have a new hose. Took this beauty cover off the other night and saw there are 4 brand new Denso ignition coils in there. He said he had a misfire issue at some point, and whoever it was working on it sold him 4 ignition coils, and I'm assuming 4 spark plugs. I did pull up the coils, and there wasn't any oil on the coils, so the tube seals are not leaking. That said, the actual cam cover gasket, the external gasket, is leaking, so we do have a new cam cover gasket to install on this vehicle as well. Just looking the engine over, lots of hoses and vacuum lines and stuff like that are very old, very brittle, and dry rotted. So I'm going to try to not move that stuff that much. Our upper engine mount is in good condition. Main issue is oil leakage. We've got a ton of oil leakage on the front of this engine. The front timing chain cover is just covered in oil. It's slow seepage leak, not like pouring, dripping on the ground leak. So not super concerning there. I'm definitely not gonna reseal this Toyota engine. He knows that I'm not comfortable with doing that. I don't have the service manuals. I don't have the procedures. I don't have torque specifications or any of that stuff for this stuff. And again, I'm not a Toyota guy. So not going to deal with that. He mentioned a rear main seal leak. I did look underneath, and we're going to look over underneath in a minute, and there is some oil accumulation between the bell housing of the transmission and the back of the engine, so I can pretty much confirm that there is some kind of leakage going on at the rear main seal. We're going to look at these engine mounts and all when we get underneath, but otherwise under the hood around the engine here, nothing too gravely concerning or immediate action needed for this car's age and mileage. I really don't think I can show you here at the back of the engine. Maybe I can, but the VVT oil solenoid right there is leaking, and the power steering pump below it is pretty much covered in oil and probably power steering fluid as well. The power steering lines are very hard and old and need to be replaced, and we are, as you see there, a little low on our power steering fluid, as well as our coolant is low too. Now, I don't have any of the Toyota red coolant to top that up with. I'm not sure what power steering. See, we use Dextron in these, so I do have some of that I can top up his power steering fluid with. Battery, I don't think is too terribly old. No complaints or issues with the battery there. And our brake fluid is very, very dark and needs replacement sooner than later. Honestly, don't know if I can name the last time I've been under a front-wheel drive vehicle or worked on a front-wheel drive vehicle. So used to Subarus and their configuration, but here's that lower oil pan. I'm calling it a lower oil pan. I think these have a two-piece oil pan system, but you can see that oil drippage around the drain plug there. You can see evidence where it's been dripping and leaking. So I'm assuming that the prior shop that worked on it last changed oil that said he needed an oil pan and his drain plug was stripping wasn't too far off. So there's that. We can see the evidence of some leakage around that oil pan as well. Not sure why that bolt is there. That's not a factory bolt. Why in the world is that oil pan bolt missing is a concern. But yeah, everything else under here, nothing really alarming or jumping out at me. So luckily our transmission pan here is nice and dry. No evidence of any leakage here. This is what I was talking about the bell housing and the rear of the engine, where there's some seepage looking like possibly a rear main seal leak going on, or slowly going on and accumulating here. I think there's an inspection plate right here that I can take off and look in there and see if there's any oil dripping. Other than that, to the back of the transmission where the final drive of the differential is, looks like we might have a little bit of leakage right there at the axle seal. Hard to tell. I have to get under here a little bit further and get the flashlight out. Looks like our power steering rack is dry. We'll have to get the front up off the ground, take the wheels and tires off, and look at the brakes, look at the suspension and steering components a little bit better than what we can see here. These are not as easy to inspect as a Subaru, that's for sure. I kind of looked at the brakes last night, just looking through the steel wheels. He had a squealing concern with the brakes, and previous shop said that he was pretty much shot down to like 3 millimeters on his brakes, something like that. The rears, just eyeballing it, looked like they had much more life than the fronts. Looked like the rears had maybe 6 to 7 mil. Fronts looked like had maybe 4 or 5 millimeters left on the pads. We'll get that apart and check and make sure we don't have uneven wear on the inner and outer pad, and go from there. Looks like our CV axle boots are nice and not torn. Looks like our ball joints are in good shape. Get a pry bar in there and check those, make sure they're not loose. Check those sway bar end links, all that good stuff. So looking at the back of the engine here, we see more of that leakage from the oil pan. We also see some oil accumulation there on the inboard boot of our Stevie axle. Looking above that at the power steering pump, we see some leakage from the power steering lines at the back of the pump there. Likely an O-ring seal right there at that metal line as it goes into the pump, and likely that suction line is dry rotted and not sealing good and just old and original. Looking back again, looks like we've got some axle seal leakage right here on the passenger side axle, as I noted before we slid further under here. And looking at our power steering rack here on the driver's side, we see some leakage from our power steering rack, but again, with 342,000 miles on the clock, that is to be expected. So looking all around the outside of the car, we've got a pretty new set of matching tires, Yokohamas. Looking here at the front suspension, these struts are likely factory. Bump stops basically degraded in there. Not really leaking, but they requested new front struts, so we're putting new front struts on it. The front brakes are worn, but they're not terrible. They're not metal to metal. We've got quite a bit of pad life left, but they are nearing the end of life. Rotors are good. No deep grooves or anything cut into them. Nothing else looking very concerning here. We can see again that leak right there, or the evidence of a leak at the boot for the inner tie rod at the control arm. And we can see some dry rot and tearing in those lower control arm bushings. Went ahead and shook the tires, whipped them off the ground. No movement in the inner outer tie rod. No movement in the ball joints. The sway bar end links look pretty old, but there's no movement in them. They are nice, not clunking, anything like that. So looking really, really good here. All right, and just like that, our quick struts are on. They call them quick struts for a reason. It's 3 nuts at the top of the strut mount. You've got the nut there for the sway bar end link. You've got the bolt there for the brake hose, and you got the 2 spindle strut mount lower bolts and nuts, and that's it. Drop it in, drop it out, and done. No spring to mess with, no compressor to mess with. Quick and easy. So on this side, we've got more buildup on that boot for the inner tie rod. We're seeing the oil on the front timing chain cover, oil on the tensioner, oil on the engine mount over here, and we can see that cracking in that lower control arm bushing. Again, our brakes are worn, but not terrible. No need for alarm. They are getting close to replacement, but they're not terrible. They're not alarming. We've got, I don't know, probably 2 oil changes to go, 5 to 10,000 miles left on those brakes. So good to go over here. So moving on to the rear, we've got some new struts installed in 2021 according to the customer. And it looks like we've got some basically new rear brakes that must have been done not too long ago, maybe at the same time as the struts were done. But everything looks great on the rear, especially, again, considering the age and the mileage of this car. The bushings are good, sway bar end link's good and tight, no clunking, no loose spherical joints there, no rust concerns. Of course, we're in South Carolina. Exhaust system is in perfect condition, subframe, just everything's great under the car, brake lines, fuel lines. Everything is looking great for this 20-year-old 342,000 mile car. So real quick look through, exterior wise and interior wise, this vehicle has held up exceptionally well. Again, for being 20 years old and having the mileage it does on the clock. So guys, that'll do it for the video and the inspection on this 2003 Camry. Looking like what you'd expect to see under the hood of something maybe 10 years old and with maybe 180,000 miles on it. Nothing really astronomical as far as repairs. The front timing chain reseal and rear main seal would be quite a substantial amount of money paying someone to do the repair. But if it was your own vehicle and you were tackling it yourself, it wouldn't be that crazy as far as parts. It's just labor intensive. So a timing chain cover, seeping some oil, power steering, hoses, fluids. Not much going on under here that needs much attention right away or anything concerning. Drivetrain, everything looked fine there in the suspension, braking components. You saw what we saw. So overall, this thing has held up exceptionally well for the age and mileage. With that said, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.